Hello, English 110 class. This is Michelle Long, Pennsylvania Institute of Technology, and it's English Skills for College Success class. This podcast is going to review Chapter 22, so I would recommend that you read Chapter 22 before or after this podcast, and also have your run-on cheat sheet that I uploaded in Moodle. We're going to be reviewing two types of run-on sentences, comma splices and fused sentences. I'm going to break up the presentations into two presentations, two podcasts, so you'll see two podcasts, but it will be the entire chapter, just broken up into two. So both of them will be uploaded in Moodle. Just please don't forget to listen to the second part of this. Okay, so the learning outcomes of this chapter, we're going to determine what the point is for editing comma splices and fused sentences. And we're going to identify what they are and some examples of both, and then identify ways to edit those sentences. Okay, so according to research, comma splices and fused sentences are two of the most common errors made by student writers. In my experience, that is the case. And in most of the papers that I edit and most of the research papers that I grade, I see run-ons as it is the most commonly used mistake in writing that I see. So I wanted to make sure and go over this chapter with you for this course because I feel like it's very important. Run-ons are two independent clauses running together without any punctuation between them or just a simple comma. So it's kind of like a marathon runner that gets to the final and then just kind of runs past the final line and continues on, doesn't stop to get a drink, doesn't stop to take a rest, just goes right past that line. So it's kind of like that with your sentences. You're just writing your sentences and you're not stopping, putting punctuation in where you should be, you're just continuing on. The two types of run-on sentences that we're going to be reviewing in this podcast are comma splices, and fused sentences. Comma splices are when you put two independent clauses together, when you join two sentences, but you only put a comma in between, which is why it's called a comma splice, because the comma is there, but it's not supposed to be there. It's not a strong enough punctuation to use between the two sentences. You have to add something else in there. We're going to talk about the 5 different ways that you can change that instead of using a comma. An example of a comma splice: gambling may be fun, comma, it also can be addicting. So notice that the two sentences are independent because they can stand on its own. They have a subject, they have a verb, they can stand on its own. You can actually start out the independent clause with a capital letter and end it with a period, and it's perfectly fine. It's a complete thought. But in this case, they put two independent clauses together rather than making them separate sentences, but they only put a comma in between. So we're going to go over some ways to correct that. 5 different ways to correct comma splices. You can put a period at the end of the first clause, start a capital letter in the second clause, make it 2 separate sentences. You can separate the 2 independent clauses with a comma, but then right directly after the comma you would put a fanboy, which is a coordinating conjunction. And fanboys, like we mentioned in previous weeks, for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. Those words you would put after the comma. Please do not put it before the comma, because I've noticed that some students do that in their writing. Make sure it's after the comma. You can put simply a semicolon in between the 2 independent clauses, and that's fine. If you don't want to be fancy, if you want to be fancy, you can put the semicolon in there as well as the conjunctive adverb. But if you put a conjunctive adverb after the semicolon, please make sure and put a comma after that conjunctive adverb. I'll give you examples of that, but please refer to your cheat sheet because it gives you some examples of popular conjunctive adverbs. You can also join sentences using a subordinating conjunction, and that subordinating conjunction can go before the independent clause in the first clause or the second clause, either way. A fused sentence is an error that occurs when 2 sentences are joined without any punctuation. So let me just give you a Webster's Dictionary definition of fused. Fused is join or blend it to form a single entity. And what that means is, grammatically, in English terms, when you place two independent clauses together, but there's no punctuation. There should be punctuation there. That is a fused. An example, gambling may be fun. It also can be addicting. Notice that there is missing punctuation between fun and it. I paused when I'm stating it verbally, which is fine, but you also want to put punctuation in there in my pause, and there's missing punctuation. So we're going to go over ways to fix fused sentences. I'm going to give you an example of a sentence that is that has incorrect grammar using both comma splices and fused sentences. And at the end, bottom of the slide, I'll show you how to correct that using the correctly used sentence.